Hi, my name is Trevor Bedsole, and this is a segment on verification and validation in software testing. So, what we want to start with is explain the main difference between the two. The easiest way to do this is to just use these sentences to remember it. Verification, did I make the thing right? Validation is, did I make the right thing? So, for example, if we go to the next slide, we can see if a customer says, I want a bike, right? What do we give them? We give them neither of these options. The reason is because the top one, he did not make the thing right. The bottom one, she made something amazing, but it's just not the right thing. That's the difference here. The car, of course, is not a bike. The top bike is clearly not functional. It's not working the way intended. That's why it's a verification problem. The bottom one is a validation problem because, as you can see, it's a car. It's not a bike. It's obviously, I would say, better than a bike, but, not what they asked for. Another example, right here, you can see a customer says, I want an easy international messaging service to make plans with friends, right? There are two examples here on the sides, Snapchat and on the right, and on the left is iMessage. iMessage can work internationally. It's all over Wi-Fi, which is great, but it has a lot of bugs in it, and they constantly have to roll out lots of fixes for it. So there's the verification issues, and it's not always reliable for international messaging as a whole. If you go over to Snapchat on the right, Snapchat's a great messaging service, very few bugs. However, it's not good to make plans with friends internationally because, well, it doesn't save your messages. So you can send a picture of something and it'll just be lost forever. So to make plans with friends, clearly if this was the example, the person giving them Snapchat would have made a mistake. They didn't keep in touch with the client well enough or the customers to fix this issue. Lastly, we have WhatsApp in the center. This is a perfect solution for this, both valid and well verified. The reason for this is because you can send messages internationally with no issues and all the messages are saved. Of course, it depends on a more in-depth list of requirements and communication between the customer or client and the developer. But for the sake of example, we can just do that. And we'll get into the details of testing both and how to avoid these situations like creating Snapchat for this when, you don't want that. So first off, let's ask ourselves, what makes a good test? And there's two main things that are important for this. One, is it atomic? This means small and focused. Is it small and focused around a very specific thing, right? So like for this bike back here, we don't want to just say, we don't want the test to be, does the bike work, right? We want it small and focused. We want it to be specific onto one part of the bike. Maybe like, when I squeeze the brake on the right handle, does the bike slow down? For example, would it be a more small and focused one? And then also we want it isolated, so it doesn't depend on other tests. So whether the brake on the bike works or not isn't affected by other tests. It doesn't depend on other tests that have been done previously. They're all independent of one another, and again, they're atomic. They're small and focused. Moving on, we can go into ways to test the two. So for verification, ways to test it. The main way is test-driven development. So this involves you find your test requirements, what needs to be working between the client and you is how you decide this, right? So you decide, oh, we need that bike handle to work, right? And then from after that, you write a test for it, right? So you write a test, like we were saying with this bike example. Of course, let's go with one more software related, like messaging, right? You want the message to be delivered, right? You want it to be received after clicking send. You want it to be received on the other end. right? So we would first write a test that has that is the test, but then it at the time does not work. It will fail, and then we basically make that work. We add in the code to make that work. Once the test passes, you're good with that test, and you rinse and repeat. So after you get that test passing, you come back here and you do another. You give another test that will fail, and then you make it pass, and you just continuously do this to get it working. And it's a very like structured way of doing things. As for validation, what's important here is who's doing the validating, right? Who are the stakeholders? Who are the people with a vested interest in this? Who's the client? Figure out your primary users, and who's going to be paying for this stuff. Outline the project with the client and the customers. Say, list a long list of requirements. You don't want to be the guy on the left in this image, right? You want to be the guy on the right with a plan in place to understand everything. And then you want to communicate with everyone, including the client. You want to be talking back and forth with them consistently, sending out surveys, asking potential customers for input. Why not test both? That's because you can test both. You can do something like beta testing, which is my personal favorite. And this basically, once you've created an outline and you've created your project, you can then beta test it with users, give them access to it, and they can give you direct feedback right from there on what is good, what is bad. They can find bugs, both validation-wise and verification-wise. And the client can test it and confirm that it fits the requirements for that the thing is right and that it's the right thing. Both of those, verification and validation. So that is all. Thank you for listening.